Welcome, Xenia, to X-Town, the podcast brought to you by Xenia's Word on the Street. I am the host and founder of XeniaWord.com, Josh Long, and I'm excited to bring you another podcast. This week, we're going to talk about annexation. But first, I just want to apologize if you hear the cicadas outside of my beautiful open window. My family and I live, and I record this from our home in the Windsor Park subdivision. It's a beautiful Thursday day as I'm recording this. It's sunshine, traffic's flowing by, cicadas are out, the windows are open, the breeze is going. It's a beautiful day in Xenia. So let's talk about annexation. And why do we want to talk about annexation? Because it's in the headlines, and that's what I like to talk about. So Central State University and the city of Xenia have announced that they're moving forward with the plans to annex the large portion of Central State University's campus into the city of Xenia. And today we're going to talk about the pros, the cons, why would they want that, who is impacted, speak to some of the public reaction that we've seen in the local media and things to date. This is not a new process. The city of Xenia and Central State University did not wake up this year and think, hey, let's annex the campus into the city for the hell of it. This has been going on for many years, well, probably close to 8 to 10. I was involved to some degree when I was on city council, and it was always a conversation. We had meetings about it. I recall as soon as 5-6 years ago. So I'm comfortable to give you a little bit of the history of this process, admitting that there are people out in this world that are more engaged into it. But I can give you from a standpoint of, since I was on council, I am familiar with some things that were tried. Again, this was not the first option. The first option was not for Central State to be annexed into the city. When Central State was having some financial problems digging into new leadership changes in their organization, they were looking at ways to improve their relationship with the city, to improve their relationship with the state, to improve their financial footing. Annexation has a lot to do with all of that. But before we dive into the pros and cons of this plan, let's talk about the history. Several years ago, the city of Xenia, Central State University, and Xenia Township were discussing forming a JED. A JED is a Joint Economic Development District, and the JED allows an agreement to be reached between the property owners and two forms of government, or maybe more, but in this case, two forms of government, to basically create an economic district around commercial entities like the campus, receive income tax from those employees in exchange for additional services and money set aside for economic development in the district. So at the end of the day, what happened in this, and I'm going to paraphrase this from a bit of a bias since I was on city council at the time, but basically here's how the process works. Central State wanted to look at ways to cut costs. One of the ways they can cut costs is reducing the price they pay for utilities like water, the price they pay for fire service from the city of Xenia. They were looking at ways to cut costs. And one of the ways to do that was entering into a JED with the city of Xenia and Xenia Township, and the process would work where Central State University would start taxing, or we were able to start taxing their employees. The city of Xenia will receive the 2.25% income tax from their employees. In return, Central State would receive reduced water rates, reduced fire service charges, etc. Part of that agreement, though, Xenia Township would receive a portion of income tax, a portion of the income tax that the city can collect, since, in fact, this property does sit in Xenia Township. There is a lot going on right now where the Xenia Township is opposing this annexation, and I'll be interested to find out their reasons for doing so. They, of course, if this annexation would come through, Xenia Township would cease to receive any portion of tax revenue, state assistance for having that campus in Xenia Township. So they do stand to lose financially in this. They do stand to lose a well-known university in their community, that recognition. Because they were never able to settle on an agreement with Central State and the city through the JED, they have now lost the ability to receive any of the income tax. That's an interesting standpoint. I would be interesting to see what the township they've already announced they're going to oppose this annexation. It'll be interesting to see the reasons why. They had the opportunity. They were all willing and ready to go to form a JED and start taxing these employees. So I hope they don't come to this table with a bleeding heart, that they're just standing up for the employees of Central State University and tax, because the township was very willing to allow the city to tax Central State University employees as long as the township got a piece of the pie. And they were asking for a very large piece of the pie, a part of the JED agreement, which the city and them could never agree on what that piece of pie should be. large degree, they were asking for a large piece of that pie. I think it's well over half of the income tax collection, yet they were not coming to the table to provide any additional services. They were just going to basically say, yeah, we approve you. We're going to enter into this JED. We're going to approve the city of Xenia taxing employees of the university as long, half or if not more, I forget the exact number, of the income tax collection. So they were very willing to move forward with a taxation on these employees as long as they saw a piece of the pie. Current arrangement with the Central State University and City of Xenia annexing, it basically cuts the township out. The township will have no say anymore at Central State University. They will not receive any tax benefit or money from them. They will not receive any of the income tax because, in essence, the Central State University will become a part of the City of Xenia. Now, why would Central State want to do this? It's very clear in their press releases. The largest reason they want to do this is for cost savings, not to their employees. So let's look at the pros and cons from that angle. The largest pro for Central State University is having a connection to a city instead of being in a township. This will help their land grant status. This will help reduce costs because they will receive fire services now and not be charged a surcharge like they're receiving now. They will be able to continue to receive water from the city of Xenia without having an upcharge. They'll be receiving water at the same rate as any business and resident in the city of Xenia. And that can equal hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just in those two savings. So it is definitely a cost driver. Now, the largest con, in my opinion, is the fact that those 100 and something employees at Central State University will now be taxed. The city of Xenia's 2.25 income tax percentage. The truth is that is a major con, and the employees do not have a say in it at all. And in fact, some, not all, will basically wake up one day and have 2% less of a paycheck. The reality, though, is a lot of Central State University employees already pay the city of Xenia income tax because they live in the city of Xenia. And then another large portion live in another community that was already taxing them for an income tax. So those employees will receive a slight credit for the city of Xenia for 1.5%, but they will also see an increase in their income tax. The employees who work at the campus and live someplace like Beaver Creek or Xenia Township, where there is no income tax, they will have the largest negative effect on their paycheck because they will all of a sudden now be paying the 2.25 city income tax. So that is an absolute real reality for those employees, and it will be interesting to see how Central State can or cannot help them to compensate for any change in what they're bringing home. Pros and cons for the city of Xenia. At the end of the day, there's very, very little cons for the city of Xenia. I'm reviewing this. When I was on council, I looked into this. I thought about it a lot. Central State University, we already provide paramedic and fire services. We already supply them water. So that's not going to place any larger of a demand on those services. Central State University has their own internal police force, so I do not think that there will be a large demand on the Xenia PD, although of course they will have some involvement with it being in the city of Xenia, just like the sheriff had some involvement when it was located or is located in Xenia Township. Outside of that, I can't think of really any negatives for the city of Xenia. If there is any negatives, it has nothing to do with annexation. Having a large campus, any college campus, in or near the city limit does provide some negatives when it comes to students and partying and activity in the community. But those have been realities for decades in Xenia. Just bringing the campus into the city limits is not going to change that impact. In fact, the real push I can see for the city of Xenia is that there's 300-something employees out there, and they will see a boost in income tax collection because of that. So those are basically the pros and cons for Central State and the city of Xenia. Pros and cons for Xenia Township as a government entity. Again, the con is that they lose the recognition of having Central State University within their boundaries. They lose some taxes that are collected from that campus from in terms of property, which isn't anywhere close to what the income tax collection will be for the city. The larger cons actually comes from fear. The fear based in the Wilberforce community surrounding the campus at this point in time. So let's talk for a second about those. So Wilberforce, for those who are listening to the podcast who don't know, is a community that is home to Central State University. It's also home to many other residents and some businesses surrounding that historically black community with a lot of significance and history and heritage there. many, many very proud residents who love to say that they live in and come from Wilberforce community. The Wilberforce community also houses Central State University. It also had Wilberforce University. There's a national park there. There's a rich history in Wilberforce, and the residents want to maintain that heritage, that identity. They do not want to eventually become a part of the city of Xenia, and I can respect that greatly. The downside to this is Wilberforce community is really just an outline on a map. They're not a legal entity. They are a part of Xenia Township. They are representative by elected leaders of Xenia Township. They do not have their own elected representatives. They are not their own village, their own city. They do not have any ability to have basically any say in what happens to the campus or the township, because they're just an informal community in the eyes of a legal entity. Something that I have always said myself was a community that is so prideful about who they are and their identity probably should take steps to protect that, to incorporate as a village or whatever needs to be done to have a more organized and legal framework to protect themselves from any future annexation. Reading in the paper, Dayton Daily News and the Xenia paper, there's many residents that are opposed to this, more so in the Wilberforce community. They are fearful that this is just step one of a land grab from the city of Xenia to annex in Wilberforce. I cannot recall in my lifetime, I'm not saying it's never happened, but I cannot recall, definitely in the last 10, 15 years that I've been actively involved in paying attention to city government, where the city of Xenia has ever forcibly annexed someone's property. In fact, it's very, very, very hard, not impossible, very hard to forcibly annex someone's property without the property owner's consent. The only way that's even possible is if enough property owners in the area, I think well over 85, 90% agree to it, and you have a few holdouts, that could force someone to be annexed into the city. The city's only annexed large swaths of land in the last 10 years once, and that is Gertie's Turf Farm, and they've done so at their request, and only at the request of the owners of Gertie's Turf Farm to annex into the city. And again, in the same examples, they are not forcibly going after the campus. Central State University is a partner and has asked to be annexed into the city of Xenia. It's not the city going for a land grab. There is some fear that having the campus annexed will eventually mean that the city will go after the land between the campus and the city, which includes most of, if not all of, Wilberforce. So they are fearful of what if this could happen. And the reality is no one can 100% promise that it will never happen. The current city council, the current city manager, have indicated that they have no plans. Even if they thought about it, they would have to come and get well over 80, 90% of the property owners within Wilberforce to agree to it. And that's very, very unlikely thing to happen. So that is the backstory of the Central State University's request to be annexed into the city of Xenia, why the township would be proposed against, why Wilberforce residents are going to be opposed to it. Of course, the city of Xenia and Central State are both proponents. They're asking for this to be done. They have a long uphill battle, or long uphill journey, let's say, for this process. It is not a clear-cut annexation case. Those typically require the entity being annexed, in this case, Central State. It requires that so much of the property being annexed to have frontage already to city of Xenia property. How that is being accomplished in this case is through the bike trail. Miles and miles of bike trail head out towards Central State University and parallel to campus. Those bike trails and the land that surround it are owned by the city of Xenia. So there is the connection between the campus and the city of Xenia. It is done through the bike trail. And the leadership of both the Central State University and the city of Xenia is hoping that that is enough frontage that the state will approve the annexation. It will be interesting to see where the county commissioners land on this, and if they will to agree to support the annexation. Of course, Xenia Township trustees are saying they are against it, and it'll be interesting to see why or what reasons they come out or why they're against it. I will tell you the two largest reasons, from my opinion, is one is they lose Central State University in any type of tax revenue, and two, they've lost because of what I can only describe as an overreach on their part. They lost an opportunity to form a partnership instead with the city of Xenia and Central State University, and in exchange receive some of the income tax that would be collected. They lost that opportunity when they asked for too much of the pie, providing zero services to the campus. Since Xenia Township does not provide fire and EMS or police or water or any utilities, they provide very little services to the campus directly. They've lost some of the ability and some of the leverage in this case. Of course, the big winner in this will be the city of Xenia. Central State will also be a big winner. They've acknowledged this in press releases that they will receive reduced costs for services, essential services like water and fire and EMS, and be able to work closely with the city of Xenia through other programs. One of the things I've always found astonishing is that there's always been a big criticism of the city of Xenia for not being more involved and more engaged with the campus. Now, the Central State University and City of Xenia has had a long history of engagement and partnership on various degrees. But the reality is that the campus is not in the city of Xenia. So the city of Xenia can only have a partnership with Central State while it still exists in the township to a small degree, more ceremonial. Our mayor was a graduate there, Mayor Bayless. She's maintained a very close relationship with the campus, a big driver in that relationship between Central State University and the city of Xenia improving over the years. But at the end of the day, the city of Xenia is there to provide services and represent their residents. And since Central State University is not within the city limits, they can only basically have a ceremonial relationship. By annexing in Central State, they now become financially and emotionally connected. The success of the campus will be shared by the city and vice versa. I'm hoping that this does happen, that we will have a larger connection with Central State University, a larger presence to acknowledge that they exist out there. You see this from a lot of colleges and other cities. When the colleges are in the city limits, they form a relationship, and it becomes a very mutual, beneficial agreement between the two when it comes to homecoming and other events. So we will have to see. My opinion is, just from a Xenia taxpayer and from a former Xenia politician, there's really not a downside to the city of Xenia. Central State University will have to be the spokesman for their employees and balance, is taxing their employees and the savings they get beneficial. When it comes to the residents of Wilberforce, they're going to have to rely on their elected representatives, Xenia Township trustees. And I'm going to tell you guys, those who live in Wilberforce, they do not have much leverage in this. They had an opportunity, they being the Xenia Township trustees, the government there had an opportunity, and I'm not there's any fault on the city of Xenia or the township. I'm saying they had an opportunity to form a JED. The three entities couldn't come to an agreement. There was a lot of talk, a lot of effort pushed to avoid annexation and talk about a joint economic development district amongst those three entities, and that fell through. Central State and the city of Xenia has then since chosen to continue with their partnership, to continue with talks of annexation, and that's where we're at. There will be many public hearings. There will be some reviews by the county, some reviews by the state. This for sure is not a done deal. They have to meet many legal approvals, but this is the direction that it's going, and I, for one, am not against it. I, for one, think that it will be a benefit to Central State, and it will be a benefit to the city of Xenia, mainly financial. But I will admit that the losers, if there are any in this arrangement, are first Central State University employees who will be taxed and seeing a direct reduction in their paychecks, and Xenia Township trustees, as they've have very little say, very little legal activity they can partake in to stop this. And why would they want to stop it? Why would they want to stop the annexation of Central State into the city of Xenia? Only one reason: financial. They will lose some financial taxation into their coffers that Central State provides, which is actually not that large. So I'm sure that that's not their motivation. Their motivation, I'm confident, from a township trustee standpoint, is to represent their residents in Wilberforce and represent their interest in that area. I'm confident that the trustees have always maintained the best interest of their community and the best interest of their government. Through this, it is just not beneficial to Central State. So Central State then has now asked for the city of Xenia to annex, for them to form that partnership, become a resident into the city of Xenia. All right, guys, I'm rambling enough about this, but if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments, leave them on Facebook. Send me an email at editor@xeniaword.com or josh@xeniaword.com. I will try to get any information to you. This is happening. This will proceed on. It's not a done deal. Many in the public will be speaking out against this, particularly in Wilberforce, particularly the township trustees. In my opinion, much of that is coming from the fears of the unknown for the future of the annexation, the plans for the city of Xenia in the area of Wilberforce. So it'll be interesting to see how Central State University and the city of Xenia helps to try to put at ease those fears. But at the end of the day, they are just unknown fears. The city of Xenia is not trying to grab land at Wilberforce University or Wilberforce Community. They are just focusing on Central State University at the request of Central State University. All right, guys, that's it. So again, I invite you to visit us at xeniaword.com for local news, events, and views, and on Facebook at facebook.com/xeniaword. I'm out of here. Thank you, guys. Have a beautiful day.
Hey, what is this?
Xenia's word on the street.